Hello there. What is going on, everyone? We're going to be talking about Star Wars Legion line of sight cover and the silhouettes and the new changes to this system that were brought about in the recent rules revamp from Atomic Mass Games. I did a video already talking about most of these changes. I didn't talk as much about this because it was sort of covered already in in some of their additional changes that they talked about earlier. So we had talked a little bit about the new silhouettes. There's all kinds of new additions and changes to the silhouette system that used to only apply to small base miniatures. FFG sort of introduced the system, then AMG has expanded upon it, and I think they've tried to simplify the rule set, but in their doing so, it's been met with some resistance from the community. As a matter of fact, we're going to talk about that in today's video. There's definitely some things I think you ought to know, and things we ought to be talking about as a community, how we feel about this, what we think, because I think in some cases, simplified rule set might kind of hurt the immersion a little bit, and sometimes it's worth doing that, sometimes it's not, and I'm curious if this rule is going to kind of stay as it is, or if it's going to be changed. So let's I want to basically break down the way that all the troopers are going to be working with their silhouettes, as well as how vehicles are going to work with their silhouettes, and the different types of silhouettes that are going to apply to different types of troopers and different types of vehicles, and then also how line of sight is working in cover and all of that. So that's the basic rundown of what we're going to be talking about in today's video. Got to do a little bit of admin stuff though first. Of course, we do giveaways all the time, and of course, to enter to win any of those, you have to be a subscriber and leave a comment on this or one of my videos. I also want to thank today's sponsor, Luxury Playstyle, the amazing full metal tokens for Star Wars Legion. These are fully compatible with the game, as well as they have a bunch of other tokens compatible with games like X-Wing, Magic the Gathering, Arkham Horror, L5R, Keyforge, all kinds of stuff. Check them out. Head over there. These are some of the best tokens you are ever going to see in your whole life. They're absolutely magnificent, and they're they're double-sided. They're kind of heavy because they're metal, so they got a little bit of a weight to them. They clank together if you kind of drop them, if you're doing like the poker chip thing. Like they're just so nice. You're going to love these tokens. And if you save 15% if you're going to use code Crabbok VIP, so make sure you head over there and don't forget to use that code. And also tell your stores and your tournament organizers that these make excellent prize support as well. So if they're looking for some fancy prize support, tell them check out Luxury Playstyle, and don't forget to give them that code so they can save 15% as well. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the silhouette templates. This is, I think, the first step to this discussion. AMG had kind of shown us some of these in one of those preview articles that we got a while back, and there was definitely initially a lot of confusion because there's two different silhouettes for troopers. Their regular troopers have like basically the same silhouette they've always had, but then notched base troopers have this longer silhouette, and they always show it lined up sideways, but I've cut them out here. Like you're basically supposed to cut them out and use this. It's basically supposed to be a taller silhouette, and the idea here is that you can set these up kind of behind your miniature, like anytime you're drawing line of sight, and it's supposed to sort of be a dome over the top. Now these notched based minis are having a taller silhouette. You're not supposed to put it sideways like it is in all of their printouts. I think they just did that to save space, but it's a PDF. What do you care about saving space if it's a PDF? That would be my feedback, is don't do that again. If it's just a PDF, it's not like you're getting charged per pixel. It's just like, just make it a full-length page and have them be, so it's less confusing. Of course, they did put the little dot on there, so to kind of help you orient. Some people had questions about the wings on these things. The wings aren't part of the silhouette. The idea is that if you printed it out, you could hold it by those wings. I don't know. I'm not a super big fan of the wings aspect on those either, but you probably won't use these. A lot of folks are getting like 3D printed ones. There's a lot of, like, ZZM Armory put out a free STL file for stuff like this, and there's I use Fifth Trooper silhouettes, at least for the regular Trooper. I'm gonna have to get some new silhouettes at some point. But basically, yes, so your notch-based troopers have a taller silhouette. That's like, it's noticeably, it's like a third more, pixels or millimeters than the other one. I don't actually know exactly how many millimeters it is. I haven't bothered to like actually measure it out because I'm not in the business of 3D printing stuff. So, but I know other people have certainly done that. So the interesting thing here is that notch-based troopers are going to be much taller. Now, not all notch-based troopers are tall. So if you, like, this is just a rough comparison, something I kind of drew up. Some notch-based troopers, and this is any unit that has that trooper subtype, right? Some notch-based troopers are that tall. The FD turret is actually, I think, just a little bit taller than that silhouette ends up kind of getting you. But then other notch-based troopers are much shorter, and so things like your Mark IIs or the Rebel veterans, their detachment, as well as the mortars, the detachment for the shore troopers, those guys actually they have like it's a blessing and a curse, and they can now shoot over a lot of stuff because technically they can see over a lot taller terrain than they would have otherwise. But that also means they can be shot as well. So I like to think of it as almost as if you're getting like an old, if you were to buy like a pack of like 50 DVDRs or CDRs or something like that, and you get that little cylinder that goes over the top of it. Because while like the notch-based trooper is taller and skinnier, all of the notch-based troopers are much wider than this. Otherwise, they wouldn't have needed a notch, right? So how is this actually supposed to work? Just think of it as a cylinder over your miniature, and you're just moving that around. Like, all right, can you see it here? Can you see it here? Does it work here? And that's how this works. So, and in the cylinder, and when you're attacking, you're able to draw line of sight from basically you're attacking from everywhere to everywhere, right? Like, and we're going to talk more about that in a minute. But that's why it's important to think of it as here, as instead of just one spot, you need to draw it everywhere. And that's where the cylinder sort of comes in. And so I did these little graphic aids to kind of illustrate that. Now, vehicles are going to be a little different. Vehicles are going to have a silhouette that goes from the base, or ground vehicles are going to have a silhouette that goes from the base up to the top of where the hull stops. And so where does the hull stop? Well, you kind of have to agree on that. And this is something I don't really like, that how they did it this way. You should kind of agree on like where the hull is, but I'm like, okay, well, there's nothing to agree on. Like the miniatures are the way they are. I mean, I get that the Scout Walker, the ATST can be built differently, but most vehicles can't really be built very much differently. So, so it's weird. But like the ATRT is a good example of the certain bits don't count in that silhouette. So like the little antenna on the back is not going to count. And actually the rider, like the head and stuff like that of the rider isn't going to count. You're going to kind of go up to the top of where the vehicle's armor and the bulk of the vehicle's hull stops. So that's going to be like 95% of the height of that mini for the ATRT. Repulsor vehicles are a little different. Repulsor vehicles are going to be a kind of more of like a disc that, a cylinder that's kind of starts at the base of the hull of the vehicle and goes up to the top. And so, of course, that's pretty cool. I think for most repulsor vehicles, that'll be a little bit easier. The lat might be a little bit more difficult than that. I want to make a distinction here and say that there are also repulsor vehicles that have hover ground that say everybody treats them like basically everybody else treats them as if they were a ground vehicle. So things like the AA5 and and the Saber tank. Those are still going to have this kind of silhouette because anybody who's shooting them is going to or that anybody else that cares about their silhouette will have to kind of use this one. So, and what this means is like no shooting under buses anymore and things like that. Whereas it used to be where you could potentially shoot under an AA5, or it even means that like sometimes people would like I didn't want to build my AA5 with both doors open because I didn't want people to be able to shoot me through it, and now you actually won't be able to anymore. What do I mean by that? Well, ground vehicles have a big new change as it applies to their silhouette, and that is that they block line of sight. You can't see through these things anymore. And I know you're looking at this and saying, wait a second, I absolutely can see through that. No, you can't. Or I should say, you're not allowed to. You know, it's like somebody put some obscene graffiti on the hull of these vehicles, and you must look away. So that's one of those rules that sort of breaks immersion a little bit. But I think there is a reason for doing it, and that is, I think it's just cleaner, perhaps. I don't know. It seems like a video game rule almost, to kind of treat them almost as one big cylinder. And maybe it's I don't really don't know why that rule was put into place. Maybe it's a rule that is there to just make it easier on judges and tournaments to just say, no, the cylinder's here, you know, you can't see through. And so maybe somebody got into an argument. I can see him, but the leg is kind of blocking part of him, but I think I can see him through, or whatever. I'm not sure. But I feel like that breaks some immersion and is a little bit problematic. And maybe it would have been easier to add a distinction between between like certain ground vehicles, like tanks being like the Gav tank or whatever, like blocking line of sight always made more sense than an ATST blocking line of sight. So maybe they should have made another classification and errated these to be walking vehicles as opposed to like wheeled or treaded vehicles or things like that. Who knows? Maybe they can always do that someday. That's the cool thing about rules and having like a virtual rule book. By the way, they've already made some changes to the rules as they went live. Like they're coming out. They're able to update those all the time too. So like it's pretty cool stuff. Another thing is vehicles have to be obscured 50% to be to benefit from cover. Now, that might sound like that's a new that's not a new rule, but that actually is a new rule. 50% was just something that we used to use at the beginning of every game to say, hey, does this building, is this taller than 50% of this model, or is a basically you would determine, hey, is this building eligible to give something like the ATST cover? And if it were like a barricade would never be able to give that cover. Something else maybe it could, something else maybe it couldn't. And you do the same thing for troopers, but you never really had to check if 50% of a model was obscured before. It used to just be obscured is obscured is obscured. If just a little bit of it is obscured, you then revert to that rule at the beginning. 50% was more commonly used for the number of models in a unit. So if you have a trooper unit with 5 models and 3 of them are behind a barricade and 2 of them are out, then the whole unit would benefit from cover because more than 50% or more was behind cover. And that's still the same. But in this case now with vehicles, 50% of the model has to be obscured in order to get cover. Now, I think like as far as like how, and that makes sense to me. That's a sensible thing. But at the same time, I feel like you're going to run into even more TO and judge calls. I'm like, I think this vehicle is 50% blocked. And, it's like, oh, well, looking from here, it's close. I think it might be only like 48%. There's going to be probably some tough calls as it applies to things like that. Now, how line of sight works with these new silhouettes used to be that you would attack from the head to the model if you could see everything. It used to be that if you could see a whole of the model, you were fine. But if it was obstructed, you would then draw a center to center base, and if that center line went through the same piece that was obscuring it, then it was then you were fine. Like in this case, a center line wouldn't have gone through the corner of that barricade or whatever. And so you would say, okay, you're not obscured. Even though I can see that it does obscure the miniature, but if I go center to center, no, it doesn't. So in that case, you don't benefit from the cover. But now you go basically from every possible spot to every possible spot, and now just like a branch from a tree or just a tiny little corner of a barricade or whatever will count as obscuring the miniature. And of course, in this case, if it's just 1-to-1, then you would then it would benefit from cover. If this were a miniature or a trooper miniature, if these were both vehicles, then of course it's not 50%, and then they wouldn't benefit from cover. So that's something else that has people getting used to it a little bit, and it's probably brought more to a head in more extreme cases where you have a very large vehicle like an ATST shooting at a bunch of troopers, and there's just a very, very small piece of scattered terrain, maybe a barricade that's in the way. Normally, under the old system, you'd use that blue line at the top and say, well, I can see all of you guys, have you out in the open, and boom. But now under the new system, they would have heavy cover because a barricade exists, and there exists an obscured shot to the majority of the miniatures through at least some point, and that can include the feet. It can include anywhere, and that's one of the biggest problems with this system right now is that it doesn't make any sense for this barricade to give these guys all the way over here heavy cover from a shot that's coming from up top. And and I definitely understand that. It's one of the things where if you try to make some of the rules a little more streamlined and easy to make rulings on, you end up coming up with rulings that break your immersion a little bit, and some people aren't too happy about this system. But that's under the new rules. This unit would have heavy cover from that barricade or that rock if at the beginning of the game you determined that this was a piece that could grant heavy cover to troopers. And I just put this little, if it's a barricade, then it would. If it's a rock that was maybe too small to give heavy cover, then fine, then it wouldn't, right? But you'd have to use that piece of terrain's their rules. Now, there's some changes to how I think certain cards and units and different keywords are going to be impacted by a lot of this. One of the big takeaways is that because cover can be drawn now, basically from any point to any point, or from every point to every point, really. Things like keywords like blast, I think, are going to be way more desired than they used to. I mean, blast has always been a good keyword, but now I feel like blast is going to be gone from like a good keyword to it went from like a B tier to like an A or even an S tier keyword, if we were doing tiers of keywords and stuff like that. So I think that's now blast usually tends to be expensive or on expensive units already, so it's maybe that's not necessarily something that's going to break anything, but that it definitely is going to see I'm more likely now to take the DW3 on an ATST as opposed to another gun, or maybe take an extra gun, maybe it's worth taking an extra hard point on top of that. Its points actually may end up going up a little bit. Another thing I think is going to go up in value is fire support as a keyword as a whole. And this is something that might impact GAR a little bit. If we're getting a lot more cover, in most situations, well, one of the things that it works really well against cover is larger dice pools, because at maximum, you're removing 2 dice with cover. I mean, and maybe more, maybe a little more if you have low profile or whatever, but that's neither here nor there. But when you're removing a fixed amount of dice, larger dice pools perform better as opposed to multiple smaller dice pools. So fire support creates that. It creates that larger dice pool and allows you to punch through an advantage that cover would give where it wouldn't have given before. So I think we may see a rise in the desirability of fire support and the usage of lists that are built to make fire support more easily employed. Another thing is Leia Organa and other units that happen to have Sharpshooter. Sharpshooter 2 is going to be, it's already been rising since low profile was a thing. Sharpshooter became more invaluable, and I think now it's going to be even better than before. So I think, she's not the only Sharpshooter unit out there. There's plenty of Sharpshooter 1 units, but there's not that many Sharpshooter 2 units. And Leia's always been a solid commander, but I think, different people who have Sharpshooters are going to see seeing a little bit more of that. Plus, effects like critical and things that can basically get around cover. I think the big losers are going to be, like saber throw and small dice pools. I feel like in sniper strike teams have already been suffering a little bit, and a lot of snipers usually tend to have sharpshooter also, so it's not not always that bad, but like Jedi usually don't have sharpshooter, and they usually, if they're doing saber throw, you're looking at really small dice pools for like a 200 point unit. Like I've always run Vader with saber throw, and it's so regrettable when you're at a point where you kind of have to throw that saber into a unit that has heavy cover. Because here I am throwing, a very expensive lightsaber into a unit that has cover 2, and I end up rolling like 2 hits and a surge, and I do no damage. Or maybe I do 1 damage, but I've got Pierce 3 on this shot, and I'm rolling 3 dice, and all of them get canceled by other effects, and it's so frustrating. And I feel like that's going to happen more often than not. It's going to happen all the time now. And so I think honestly, I may never run Vader with saber throw again. It's and that's a tough pill to swallow. It's worth thinking about. I don't think saber throw is going to be an auto include for me anymore for Darth Vader, or even Maul for that matter. I mean, granted, 4 red dice is better than 3 red dice, but still, I mean, you've got to really hope that you don't roll any blanks there and waste what a great shot that would be. So there's definitely a lot of other impacts. I want to hear some of your thoughts on the new system for the silhouettes, line of sight, and cover. And if there's anything maybe I didn't talk about that you want to talk about, you can also join our Discord. We have a great family-friendly Discord. There's links for it in the video description below. I want to thank you guys for watching. We do giveaways all the time on this channel. We are currently finishing up a $25 Amazon gift card giveaway to help you get into any of the expansions of your choice. Today's winner is going to be Justin Payton. So congratulations, Justin. Make sure you shoot me an email over at mailcrabbok@gmail.com, and I'll get you your contact information. We'll get you squared away from there. If you did not win, don't worry, we have new giveaways happening all the time, so stay tuned. Plus, we'll sometimes do giveaways in Discord, also on Patreon. So if you're looking for lots of opportunities, there are all sorts of links in the description below. You can also check out social media, Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, all of that good stuff is there's links for it all of them down there in the video description below. Hopefully we'll talk more soon. Lots of Legion news is on the horizon. It's a very exciting time. We'll talk to you guys later. Big thanks to my patrons. You guys are amazing and help make this channel possible, so thank you for your continued support. I will talk to you later. May the Force be with you. Live long and prosper. Be excellent to each other, and party on, dudes!